Great. So we've got another terrific guest here at the Clinton Global Initiatives. If you could say who you are and where you're from.
I'm Sean Kidney. I'm the CEO of the Climate Bonds Initiative. We're a global NGO promoting green debt, green finance, green bonds, of which there are $2 to $3 trillion around the world now.
Wow. What commitment are you making here? Because it's meant to be all about commitments at this event here during Climate Week NYC.
Sure. Well, what we're working on is the architecture of further growth of capital flows to addressing climate change. That's mitigation and adaptation resilience. We've previously made a projection that we need to achieve $5 trillion of green bonds and climate bonds by 2025. And the commitment we're saying is the architecture we're bringing to bear will create $1.5 trillion of resilience-specific bonds by the end of 2025.
Okay. And is that a new pathway for the Climate Bonds Initiative, or is it a scaling up of an existing program?
Well, it's a scaling up in the sense that the idea has always been to bring institutional investors to bear to understand the risks they face and the need to act, and also the extent to which they need to work together to change the direction of the Titanic. You know, you can shuffle deck chairs in the Titanic to a certain degree, which is portfolio changes, but actually you've got to change the direction of the Titanic. If we can get people acting in these ways, we have changed. Well, we've done the first part. We've created proof that they will invest if we give them stuff to invest in. That's the $2 to $3 trillion outstanding. Now we're expanding their understanding of what needs to be done. And that's where resilience comes in, because, you know, we've lost the fight against climate change, Nick, as you know. We're now in a race to stop catastrophic. That's the mitigation agenda. In the meantime, we now have to prepare our world for what is going to be a 21st century of shock after shock after shock. How do we make sure we can stand up again as a society every morning, every time we get hit? That's the resilience agenda.
Just so that the viewers can just understand, so is there an example of a climate resilience bond that's been issued? Where and what is it doing?
Well, Netherlands government has issued a sovereign green bond for coastal flood protection. I mean, you would hope the Netherlands has got that worked out, right? So they're financing that with sovereign green bonds. Cape Town has done a water resilience bond. They had a severe drought recently. They've built infrastructure to try and better manage droughts. You've also got some social bonds that have come through, usually, mainly out of the pandemic, that need to be understood as creating resilience in our society. So to take, for example, the European Commission has raised 10 billion euros of bonds for unemployment relief in a crisis. Actually, that's an economic stabiliser. That's like introducing unemployment relief in 2030. It's a necessary measure to ensure we can get up and walk again the next morning as a society. This becomes not just a social investment, but also a climate resilience investment. And there's a bunch of things like this. There are vaccination bonds that I'm going to say nowadays we need to understand as climate resilience, because pandemics are a feature of climate change. The IPCC Health Committee's been saying for 30 years, pandemic after pandemic after pandemic will be a feature. Hey, let's prepare.
The numbers are interesting because you're now talking in the trillions. What is your general perspective at the moment about how climate finance overall is moving? Is it moving fast enough? If it's not moving fast enough, why, Sean?
It's moving in the right direction. We've laid a foundation. We've got incredible appetite by global investors, the folks that control $130 trillion of our money, to invest in solutions. There just aren't enough things for them to invest in. And part of it is them not understanding always what are critical investments going forward. There's also a risk problem. You know, 70% of what we've got to do is in emerging markets, not in rich countries. There's a fear of risk. In terms of moving money very quickly, we're going to have to step in with what's called junior capital in various places to get the faucets open, to get the money starting flowing. That needs a more aggressive stance on the part of G7 countries and multilateral development banks in particular. That agenda is developing, but we're 10 years late to the party, so we've got to move very fast. So the architecture is beginning to come together. The certainty of change is now absolute. The shape of the future has clearly been decided, is what investors think. It's now a matter of the speed of getting there and who's going to be a winner and loser. Now we need to clarify what works, make sure that we tilt our playing field to the solutions, and get about the real job, which is imagining a future that our children can live in the context of this volatility of the 21st century, it has to be very different. Our cities have to be different. Our agriculture has to be different. Time to create.
Yeah. And an exciting future as well, if we can get it right. Not
Correct.
only avoiding catastrophic climate change, but actually healthier cities, healthier lifestyles, and delivering opportunity for, 6 billion people plus going to over 10 billion by 2050. So it should be an exciting project and not a scary project.
It's incredibly exciting.
Yes.
And I've just come from another event where we've been talking about the opportunities to invest in things that will create this kind of future. They are popping up at scale. And if you've decided, as most investors have, that the old world, the fossil fuel world, is actually now scaling out. The only question is how fast it'll scale out. You need to find places to put your money that have got the opportunity to grow, and this is where it lies, creating this kind of clean, green world. It means very efficient, healthy buildings, for example. 2/3 of hard assets on the planet are property assets. This is really material, this part. It means creating the kind of agriculture that will address sequestration and sustainability at the same time and give better livelihoods. Also, by the way, creating jobs in emerging market cities for all those people moving into the cities. And that's going to be a very different thing to the old manufacturing base. It's going to be more like Bollywood than it is a manufacturing base, or Nollywood in Nigeria.
Yeah.
So on. These are the industries that will grow, that need to grow, if we're to absorb people into those new urban environments and make sure it's clean and green.
Super. So, on We Don't Have Time, on wedon'thavetime.org and our platform, people can give climate warnings to companies or individuals or governments that they feel maybe aren't, pulling their weight in terms of, acting on the climate crisis. But we also have something called Climate Love, Sean. And we have this little symbol, which is a green heart. And we wanted to ask you today, we're asking all our guests here at the Clinton Global Initiatives, for someone or some organization that you feel deserves a green bit of a green heart, deserves climate love. Who would you give it to? You have to hold it.
Look, I would give it to a Minister of Climate Change in a government that has just come into power, which is an exemplar of the challenges all governments face, if you like. Chris Bowen, Minister of Climate Change in Australia, understands the problems, understands the nature of the solutions, but he's dealing with an extraordinary, jaundiced, conservative body politic, a bit like Louisiana, and has to figure out how to change things really fast. My heart goes out to him.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks very much, Sean Kidney of the Climate Bonds Initiative.
Thank you, Nick.